Good morning, Tampa Bay. What is going on? Happy Hockey Day, Tuesday, October 11th. The day has finally arrived. Tampa Bay Lightning hockey is back. Our boys, of course, are traveling to New York City to take on the Rangers. They got there yesterday, dressed all dapper as they got on the plane. We'll be joined by our senior Lightning analyst, Henry Yoho, in just a few minutes. We're going to talk all things Tampa Bay Lightning heading into the season, heading into tonight's game, things that we should look for. Of course, if you follow the Channelside Sports Twitter account, you saw the graphic earlier from our Deandra Lou and Henry with their Atlantic Division predictions. I did give my hot take, but I did it in the comments section, which I guess we could dissect in a minute when I bring Henry aboard. And then we're going to look at the controversial flag that was thrown on Grady Jarrett, the roughing the passer flag. Everybody's very upset about it. You know, I touched on it yesterday, but I want to rehash that a little bit, and then we'll get into that towards the end of the show. But nonetheless, you are here. I am here. Henry is here. Let's jump into it. Let's talk a little bit Tampa Bay Lightning. Henry, good morning. How are you doing?
Hey, good morning. I'm doing well. It's a great day to be talking about hockey again.
Good Lord. I mean, it doesn't seem like it was that long ago when you and I were chopping it up almost every morning during the last playoff run.
Yeah, no, it's the off season seems to get shorter and shorter. It's felt that way, especially the past few years with the team going so deep all the time. But hey, here we are again.
Here we are again. We've got the Rangers tonight. And we'll talk about that right now. I'm so excited that this is the first matchup. Like, how many times do you see in like basketball or you see it in football where it's like the two teams that won the Super Bowl will play, or the two teams are in the, you know what I mean? And like, we just saw that. I'm not really that interested in it. But now we get to see an upcoming powerhouse in the New York Rangers versus our Tampa Bay is still a powerhouse. I mean, there's no way you can't say that the team is not a powerhouse, but now you've got both of these teams hashing it out. And I think, that's what the fans really wanted to see, in my opinion, was the Rangers and the Lightning, especially to kick it off on opening night of the season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Even for the NHL, it's a bit of a different flavor from what they often bring. A lot of times the opening game is the defending champ, which of course the Lightning weren't this time. And I guess it's a little different for them being from out west, but they're getting the big Wednesday night game, Colorado, that is. But still, it's a big opening night game because, it's always big when you involve a New York team and when you build up the storylines of the Eastern Conference rematch with the top dog still from the Eastern Conference. And, everyone's going to run with the goalie storylines. The goalie matchup is about as good as it gets. So, that's one of the biggest talking points for this little rivalry that these teams have going now. And yeah, it's going to be one of the big storylines tonight for sure.
How quickly do you think we get an Igor's better chant from the it's got to be a sold out Madison Square Garden crowd. It's got to be. I mean, we don't have the numbers yet, and we'll see it. But how quickly do you think we're going to hear that from the fans, because they're going to be rabid tonight?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, the crowd's gonna be unreal there for sure, and I think you can expect that. Right, if the Rangers end up getting an early lead on the Lightning. So I think that's something they can totally expect. They've had the whole off season to think about, what happened to them in playoffs. So I think as soon as the Rangers get some positive momentum with a lead, I think you can hear that right away.
I'm wondering, what do you think are some key matchups in tonight's, outside of Shesterkin and Vasilevsky, because we know that that's going to be, the matchup of the two arguably best goaltenders in the NHL. That's going to be obviously the most watched matchup. But, outside of those guys, who do you think is going to be like some key matchups for fans to be watching tonight?
Yeah, for sure. as we mentioned, it's two of the best teams in the Eastern Conference, and it's two pretty star-studded lineups, especially up front. I think that the top six forwards for both teams kind of are pretty equal to each other. But I think one thing that I'm going to be watching is the Ranger power play was so great last year in playoffs. It kind of was keeping them alive in the series a year ago with the Lightning because they kind of got shut down as the series went along, playing at 5-on-5. So the Lightning penalty kill has struggled a bit in the preseason, and I think how they match up against the Rangers power play that was quite deadly for them in playoffs last year is going to be huge early test for the Lightning penalty kill. It's probably going to have a few new faces on it as well this year.
Yeah. One thing that we noticed, and I think all fans noticed this last year, is that even against the Rangers, when they have their, and I guess it's fitting now because like when the Rangers have their kid line in, I'm sure we're going to hear about that again tonight. When they have their youthful lineup in, our veterans can't necessarily keep up with them on the skates. We noticed that was kind of like a reoccurring theme outside of the Panthers, who are also a little bit older as well. But in round one against the Maple Leafs, in the third round against the Rangers, and then of course in the final against the Avalanche, we noticed like, hey, our guys aren't that fast on the skates comparatively to these other teams. So when we saw them, when they would adapt and they would play the other team's game, right? Like that to me is when they started turning the corner. Do you think that, we made some signings, we brought in some new guys tonight. Do you think that they addressed the speed issue enough heading into the season against some of these younger squads like the Rangers?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, I don't really think that they made significant changes in any particular aspect of the roster. They brought in, as far as forwards go, they brought in Vlad Nemesnikov, who has been a bit of a speedster in his career, and Cole Koepke's going to be getting in the lineup for his NHL debut as well, and he can move around as well, but I don't see a significant change in the identity of this team to play a significantly faster style. I think that they're going to rely more on the defensive structure of their game rather than trying to push the tempo the way that the Rangers can. And the Lightning were able to survive that playing that way in playoffs just by the focus and attention to defending. And over the course of the regular season, that sort of focus you can't dial that up for 82 games over the course of a regular season. So I mean, it might catch up to them a couple times here and there, but over the course of the long season, I don't see them getting into too many track meets as they might have used to.
Adam Kimmelman from ESPN was on record saying that he thinks that this Tampa Bay Lightning team has the recipe for a championship based off of them losing last year, and says that they're more motivated this season to win than they were last season to win the three-peat, which I as a, the competitor in me, I 100% understand where his thought process is coming from. But a lot of people, have a differing of an opinion. Where do you stand on that comment? And do you think that the Lightning are more motivated this season than last season?
Yeah. No, there's definitely some truth to that there. Last 2 seasons they've been coming off winning the year before, and it's been quite a while since we saw them come into the season after losing. The last time that they went into a new season after disappointment the year before was coming into the 2019-20 season after what ended. How things ended against Columbus in 2019. Obviously, that was incredibly disappointing, and the motivation was extremely high going into that season, and you saw how it ended up for them. So I think there certainly is something to be said for that. They've experienced winning and they know what it takes, but now having a little bit of extra motivation of how things ended the season ago, I think there obviously has to be some motivation there. So, and as long as they have the this group intact for the most part, they're always going to have a real shot at it. So that's just more reason to go for it for now.
Realistically, how long do you think we have with the core guys still being together? Because we know this actually might have been the first off season. I guess this is a twofold conversation right now. Like, how long do we have? And then also, is this the first off season where we haven't really heard it's time to trade Stamkos? Because that's always like a reoccurring theme is every off season.
Yeah,
Like, oh, it's time to trade him away. We
yeah,
didn't have that.
yeah. No, it's part because he had probably he scoring wise had his best regular season of his career, 100-point season. At this point in his career, what more can you say? And he also had his best playoff run statistically as well. And so I guess that conversation has gone away for now. But yeah, I mean, I've always believed that as long as they've got Andre Vasilevsky in net, that the window is always going to be open, and I'll stand behind that. But there are significant core pieces as well as with Hedman and Stamkos that they've been the anchors of this organization for over a decade now, and I think that as long as as those two are still here as well, they're always going to keep going for it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we know that at some point Stammer is going to end up hanging it up, and that's definitely going to be a sad day when we have that. It's weird though because like everybody feels like he's some grizzled old veteran, but he's not that old. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? He's only 32 years old. If he's old, I'm 36, Henry. Like
yeah,
we can't say that Stammer's like this grizzled old veteran. Like I know he's had some injuries over the course of his career, and maybe that's what's leading to it. But I
hmm
mean, like you look at like Bellemare, he's 37 years old, and you don't ever hear people going, "Well, it's about time for him to hang it up," you know?
yeah. No, I think part of it's just because he's been on the scene since he was 18 years old, and he was um, pegged as the top pick of the draft. Well before then too. So I mean,
Mhm.
he was drafted here in 2008. That's kind of a while ago now, and he's been playing here for a long time. And he's gonna be coming up on 1,000 games not too long from now. And I think that as you mentioned, the injuries and stuff, like he's been through a lot in his career, like so many ups and downs. A lot of it coming with injuries, and he's been around for a long time now, and it's been impressive the kind of late season rejuvenation he's had now that he's gotten to have some healthy off seasons and has gotten to train and prepare for seasons the way that he would want to after there was a run of 3-4 seasons where he was hurt regularly and spent more of the off season recovering instead of really trying to improve as a player.
Who do you think? Because we obviously, we had quite a few long-term extensions happen over the offseason, which Julian Brisbois is very good at that. We saw Braden Point got that last year in the offseason. Nick Paul, Sergachev. We had what, four? I think four contracts go
Yeah,
beyond 5-year extensions. Who do you think is going to, I want to say, make the most of it? Because you know how some guys get where they get like these nice big cushy deals and then they kind of
hmm
reel it back a little bit. Who do you think is
sure.
going to be more balls to the wall out of the bunch of guys who got it?
Yeah, yeah. Like you mentioned, yeah, Nick Paul got an extension as well, and on the first day of free agency, um, Mikhail Sergachev, Anthony Cirelli, and Eric Chernak all got signed to the maximum length extensions that all go into effect next year. But yeah, if I had to pick one that's going to make the most of their dollar, I'd have to say probably Mikhail Sergachev is the this is definitely like his first season. That he's full season without Ryan McDonough around, so he's going to step into the second pairing as the number two defenseman on this team now. And the truth is, his the first 4 or 5 seasons of his career have been kind of sheltered. Being able to play behind McDonough and Hedman, and his past few years, he's found himself around third and fourth a lot in ice time among defensemen. But now I think you're going to see him regularly as number two in ice time
Mhm.
behind Hedman, and he might even push him for most some nights. But I think that he's the one that's going to expand in a bigger role now, especially without Hedman. And I think it's time to let the reins loose on him. completely now. So I think you're going to see him always over 20 minutes a night now.
Yeah, and that was a point of emphasis for him in the offseason as well. Like he was very NHL players aren't typically not very active on social media during the offseason, but he was posting workout videos on his Instagram, like just trying to increase his stamina because we saw what happened. You know, he had to play a lot in the Stanley Cup final when guys were going down. And I mean, there were times I remember you and I texting during I don't remember which game it was, but we were like, dude, like Sergachev's up to like nearly 30 minutes of ice time like in this game, and that's just insane. You know, so
Yeah.
I think that you hit the nail on the head. I think Sergachev has, I think he has the biggest shoes to fill, and he has the high and the most expectations. He has the highest of expectations out of the bunch. Could be we know what we're going to get from Nick Paul, but we don't know what we're going to get from a Mikhail Sergachev that needs to elevate and play more, right? Because of the trade of Ryan McDonough.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And you know, he's played on the third pair for pretty much the entirety of his career with the team like at full health on defense. But I mean, I wouldn't really say that he played third pair minutes just because he gets so much time on power play and also on the penalty kill. So he might be technically playing on what's been considered the third pair in the past, but he's been getting enough ice time experience where he's not really been playing, you know, third pair minutes. But you know, now the opportunity is there that he's not going to be playing that third pair anymore. That's going to be a thing of the past now. So I mean, it's a great opportunity ahead of him this season to grow his role in this team even further.
Absolutely. How how bad do you think Alex Killorn wants to get off his schneid tonight and just start the season off right away? Because I mean, he was basically a non-factor for what the entire playoffs. No goal, which is crazy for somebody like an Alex Killorn. You know, so how badly do you think? Like, do you think that's even weighing on his mind as he heads into tonight? Of like, please just let me get the just let me hit the back of the net once. Just let me get it over with and move on with life.
Yeah, no, I think that he's definitely turned the page, but I mean, it is something I thought about all off season. How disappointing, you know, it was for him and the team, how the way things went for him personally in playoffs last year. You know, everyone knows he didn't score a goal the entire run. Being a guy who's scored a ton of big goals, especially in playoffs over the years, and it was also disappointing just because he came off a career best year scoring wise, and so it's especially interesting now coming into the last year of his contract, and he's expressed, you know, the desire to want to stay here in Tampa for the rest of his career, and you know, with the guys we mentioned previously who are there have their extensions kicking in next year, it's going to be more difficult to make that happen again. So I mean, I think it's going to be a real interesting season the way things unfold for him to see if what his next contract would be like, if whether it's here or somewhere else. But I think that certainly he wants to get something going early on the season because you know, nobody liked you know, the way that things ended up for him last year in playoffs, which was quite disappointing.
Absolutely. Another point of emphasis that I think that we need to look at is, do you think Brian Elliott gets more time in net this season to keep Vasilevsky fresher in the playoffs? You know, because there were times where Vazzy was in, like during that playoff run, there were times where Vazzy looked like Andre Vasilevsky, but then there were other times where you're like, who is the guy in that? Like, who put on a Vazzy jersey that's just not playing up to his caliber? And I think a lot of that had to just do with, you know, the repetition and just fatigue.
Yeah, no, that's a very real thing. You know, I've been going back and forth on what I think or what should be the magic number for him for Vasilevsky getting starts. I can't put an exact number on it. I've thought about 55 starts would be about the number. You know, there's not too many starters these days who are going to be getting that 55 to 60 start range in the NHL anymore. But I think that's sort of the magic number here. I'm going to look at his numbers for starts the past few seasons. So last year he started 63 of the 82 regular season games. I think that is I think that they're definitely going to want to go lower than that, because I thought that even in his rare starts, I thought Brian Elliott was quite good for a backup goaltender. I think that he's been probably the best backup goaltender that Andrei Vasilevsky's had in recent years. So 63 was the number last year. I can definitely see it being much fewer than that. I think 55 or so is what they might shoot for. Try to keep him fresh.
Yeah, I think that's the fair, because Vazzy's without a shadow of a doubt the best goal in the NHL, and you've got that this team is capable of making a deep playoff run. There shouldn't be any question in anybody's mind whether this team is going to make the playoffs and make a deep playoff run. There shouldn't be any question, So you got to keep Vazzy healthy. You have to keep him. You got to keep him fresh, and you have to make sure that he's ready to rock and roll. Because nobody wants to see multiple 7-game series in the playoffs, right? Like nobody wants to see that, and those are taxing, especially when you have an older roster. A more seasoned, a more seasoned roster that's the term we'll go with this morning, Henry. But that's what you want. You don't want 7-game series. It is a long season, and you just have to make sure that you're starting to look at the bigger picture. And I don't think there's any better coach in the NHL than John Cooper at seeing the big picture when it comes to the grand spectrum of the entire game of hockey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think the mentality of everyone kind of around this team has been kind of just make playoffs and then see what happens. Of course, they want to be playing the right way, especially as they're getting into playoffs. But the regular season, they've got really nothing to prove at this point. They've got done pretty much everything as far as playoffs go. And you've seen last 2 seasons, finishing third in the division and going on to the final. That's why in my preseason prediction, I picked Lightning, finished 3 again. I think that they're perfectly content, finishing right there again. So, I think that this team knows how to pace themselves, and they know how to navigate the regular season. It's all about just making playoffs and then see, because they're capable of winning with or without the home ice advantage. So,
right.
I think that's also another element that you might see, Brian Elliott more, just because, I feel like there's not too many circumstances over the regular season that you're going to say, oh, we have to absolutely win this game. So we need Andrei Vasilevsky in there. That circumstance isn't going to come up a whole lot. So, and you've got a good backup goaltender that you can rely on as well.
So the Rangers are favored by 1.5 tonight, which realistically tells you it's the beginning of the season. Because there's both games tonight are a 1.5 spread, positive or negative. Who do you like? Do you like the Lightning coming out hot tonight, or do you think that the Lightning are going to come out, try to, I don't know, maybe play a little differently because they do have some new lines, just trying to get their just try to get their skates under them, knowing that it is a long season? Or do you think that they're going to come out kind of firing on all cylinders right off the rip and bring home the W back to Tampa for the 18th against the Flyers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think they're definitely going to have a lot of energy. So will New York, playing in their home crowd, especially with the motivation of a team that they lost to last year in playoffs. But I think the Lightning are going to be a little conservative to start with. I think they're going to be trying to try to ease into the game and get a feel for some of the new combinations that they have. They're going to have 3 NHLers who weren't in the lineup last year, and a debut as well. So you've got 4 players, coming in and new into this lineup, and they're going to be trying to get a feel for things. And they're just kind of, I think that they're going to be kind of easing into the start a little bit. But I think that that's what we can expect. But I think that they can certainly win the game as well. Lightning have started well for the most part in season openers over John Cooper's tenure. They haven't started on the road though too often it's the first start on the road since the 2013-14 season. So, and last year was one of the rare times that they actually lost on opening night. So, yeah, we'll see a little something from this team, but I don't think any real great observations of the greater picture will show up tonight. I don't think.
All right, so we'll do some little season predictions here. Last year Steven Stamkos led the team with 106 points. Does he replicate the 100 points? Does somebody take over? Who leads the team in points for the Lightning this season?
As far as the season leader goes, I'll have to say I would have to go with Kucherov. I think that he's the ultimate offensive weapon, and he missed some significant time last year due to injury. So I'll have to pick him for the season points lead. But I also will double down and say that Stammer will get back to 100 points again for the second time of his career. I like his chances of being able to do that. He came off a career best year in the regular season and a career best playoffs. So, I mean, I think he's got a lot to be feeling good about. So I think that we could definitely see the second 100-point season of his career. But it's not to make 100 points sound like a piece of cake. It's an incredible accomplishment to get to 100 points. So, but I think that he can certainly do it.
I mean, that would be a hell of a run if Stammer eclipsed 100 and Cooch led the team in points, because that means that we've got two 100-point scorers on the team, which is incredible. So, sign me up, Henry. Sign me. Where do I sign on the dotted line there? Because that's definitely something that let's hope that pans out. How about goals? So Stammer obviously also led the team last year in goals. The next closest wasn't, I mean, when that close, it was Braden Point with 28. Does Stammer still take the lead with goals though?
Yeah, I would have to say so. I think he's definitely the most pure goal scorer on this team and is one of the most in the league's history. So I think that you can certainly see him, leading the team in goals. I don't think he's going to be contending for the league lead for the Rocket Richard Trophy, but I think he might be there in the conversation at some point over the course of the season. But I think you can totally count on him to lead the team in goal scoring again this season.
Victor Hedman led the team in assists in 65. Stammer was right behind him with 64, followed by Cooch. Obviously, Cooch played nearly 40 games less than both Stamkos and Hedman, but he also had 44 assists. It would lead me to believe that we're either going to see Hedman or Cooch lead the team in assists. Yeah. Just based off of the statistics and analytics of what we saw last season. I would say that I would expect Cooch to lead the team in assists this year.
Yeah, no, I would as well. He's one of the most high-end playmakers and creators and distributors of the puck in the NHL. And I think that you can expect him to lead the team in assists. A testament to Victor Hedman as well. You don't see too many defensemen, leading the team in assists. I mean, there's probably only a handful of those guys in the NHL. Hedman, Makar, and Roman Josi. I mean, you probably won't see too many other. Maybe Adam Fox as well from the Rangers. Up among the team lead among defensemen as far as assists goes. I think the Hedman will be right there again, but I think that Kucherov will more than likely be the leader assuming he stays healthy the entire year.
All right, now we'll jump to a lot of people's favorite statistic: penalty minutes.
Oh,
Patty Maroon had 134 penalty minutes. The next closest was Cirelli with 70. I mean, Patty Maroon is the bruiser. He is the enforcer of this team. I don't see any way that he doesn't lead the team again in penalty minutes. Yeah. But do you think that he's going to eclipse the buck 34, or do you think that he's going to try and be more cognizant and fall under that number?
No, I think that he's a lock to be the team leader in penalty minutes. I don't know. That's big. That's a big number to match from a year ago, but I think he'll certainly be in the ballpark for sure. A lot of, he's been the main guy dropping the gloves the last few years. So, I mean, if you're adding in 5 minutes at a time, those numbers are going to go up. So, I think that's the lock of the season is putting him at the top.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I hope it's less than 134, but I mean, it's nice to see the gloves drop every now and then. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
that's the best. I don't want to say this is the best part of hockey, but that's just like, for the casual fan. How many times do you talk to a casual hockey fan and they're like, "Oh yeah, they fight so much in hockey." Where you're like, "Well, hey, they don't really fight that much anymore." But B,
Yeah.
like everybody just assumes it's like MMA out on ice, right?
Hmm.
Which it's
Yeah.
really
No.
it's not.
Yeah.
It's more of a finesse game.
Yeah. You don't see it so much anymore, but it's still a part of the game, and he's one of the more willing combatants. So especially on this team. So um, yeah, 134. I don't know if you can see him meet that again. Fighting seems to decrease each season now, but yeah, he'll certainly still be there.
And then I guess the final week we touched on it earlier. Victor Hedman led the team with 25:04 as far as average time on ice per game. Sergachev was just behind him, 22:28, followed by uh, the our former defenseman. I was trying to think of words there. Ryan McDonough, who was at 22:26. Um, you think Sergachev will increase what 3 minutes, 4 minutes per game, something like that?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a real possibility for sure.
Do you think with McDonough being gone as well, does that increase Hedman's ice time, or do you think they're going to try and monitor that and keep him floating around
Mm.
25?
Yeah, I think they'll try to keep Hedman around the same mark. I think that Sergachev will pick up a lot of those minutes left behind by Ryan McDonough. But I think that Hedman, I think that you mentioned 25 was the average
Mhm.
a season ago. I think they'd like to keep it around there for sure.
Beautiful. So Henry, we've got the Lightning finishing third in the division.
Hmm.
How deep into the playoffs are they going? Are you going Stanley Cup right off the rip? Are they bringing Lord Stanley back to bask in the sun, to take the boat parade? Like, is that what's going to happen? Like, or is
Yeah,
it too early for you to confidently say like, oh no, the cup's coming back here for sure?
yeah. No, they definitely can. It's certainly a little early to declare that it absolutely is going to happen. We've been pretty spoiled here the last few years. It might seem easy to get there, going 3 years in a row, but I mean, it's an incredibly hard journey to get there. They're certainly capable of it. I'm not calling it a lock yet, but I still think they're the top dogs in the Eastern Conference, especially. So, until somebody can get them out in the East, there's no reason to believe that they can't get back there and win it again. I mean, they were 2 games away last year against one of the all-time great playoff teams against Colorado. So, there was absolutely no shame in the way that they lost, and I think they can certainly do it again. So, there's no reason to believe that they can't do it again.
Totally agree. I think one thing that we still have to um, pay attention to is that one of the talking points last season during the playoffs especially was nobody's played more hockey over the last 3 years than
Hmm.
the Tampa Bay Lightning. That still
Yeah,
reigns true because they were there until the end. So over the last four
yeah,
years now, nobody's played more hockey than the Tampa Bay Lightning have, and that's something that I feel like since they didn't win the cup, that narrative kind of went away. At
hmm,
least amongst talking amongst other fans, I feel like that narrative has kind of died down, but that still very much reigns true.
yeah, yeah. No, we talked about it all last year, all regular season, all playoffs. Like when the Miles are going to catch up with this team. Um, of course, they didn't come away winning it, but they still played, the maximum amount of games. So it didn't really make any difference. They actually ended up playing more games in the playoffs than Colorado did. So, I think that you're still going to see the mileage be a talking point of conversation. And, it's been more games, especially because of the COVID seasons. The seasons getting condensed And the Lightning made 2 Stanley Cup final runs in 10 months between the 2020 and the 2021 season. Like, no one in the history of the game has played this many games in as small a period of a time. So it's something that's totally still going to be there. The mileage, and we'll see if it shows up. This season at any point towards the end. But yeah, I mean, I'm still a believer that the opportunity to win is still there.
I'm definitely with you. You know what? As we're talking through this, I'm starting to wonder if John Cooper is actually going to try and regulate some of that.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is try and, and keep ice time down as much as possible, for some of the older guys, right? For some of the core players, because he's a lawyer. He's very
Yeah.
smart, he's very well educated. He
Mm-hmm.
understands the game through and through. So I'm, as we're talking through this, I'm wondering, okay, obviously he's going to be cognizant of it. He talked
Mm-hmm.
about that in the exit interview following the game. He couldn't be more proud of these guys, battling through all of the injuries that they had, playing as much hockey over the last 3 years as they had. I'm wondering if we'll see a little bit of that, almost like a load management like you see in the NBA.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, no, I certainly think that that'll be something that's considered. I don't think they're going to be, forcing guys back from injury or anything like that, or forcing them to play through significant injury or things like that. If the guys, if they're going to be a bit beat up, I mean, and they've got extra bodies around, and they might say, hey, take this one out. But I mean, and then as far as like the ice time management goes, as far as the forwards are concerned, I don't think you're going to see, like Kucherov and Point, really regularly playing like over 20 minutes, with regularity. So I think that they're going to try to want to keep things balanced up front, especially with trying to figure out, new roles for some certain players who can be stepping up, due to some losses in the off season. So they've got a lot of things to figure out. So they can try to get a feel for what their new identity is going to sort of be as well.
Well, if anybody knows how to plug and play players, it's John Cooper in that offense. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, definitely. And the salary cap's going to only allow them to keep one extra body at the moment. So we'll see as the season goes along who can step in, because it's the NHL and injuries do happen. So we're going to see some other people sliding into the lineup though, for sure, at some point.
All right, last one for you before I let you go here. Who do you think is going to step up and kind of be a surprise player, of like a lesser known player stepping up into a bigger role? Who do you think is going to who's going to be that guy this season?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, over the offseason, I've been wanting to say Brandon Hagel, just because I believe that when he came in last year, the expectations were pretty high, coming off of the high end offensive output that he had in his time with Chicago, especially getting top end minutes playing with Patrick Kane. Whenever he came in here, he didn't really, he might have been a little bit below the expectation, but he was also playing further down in the lineup than he had been previously. So he was kind of taking on a different sort of role, and scoring wasn't really something that was needed from him. But this year, I think that he's going to get some opportunities to play in the top six. I've even thought that he could be a top line candidate, with Andre Palat no longer around. So I think that he's certainly in line for a bigger season offensively. And I think that'll come with increased opportunity because of Anthony Cirelli. He's not going to be playing for the first couple months of the season, and Andre Palat is no longer here. So that's 2 top 6 spots, of players that are no longer around. So I think that he's going to get some opportunity, and I think that he's, poised to be able to take advantage of it.
Henry, I like it. I can't wait for tonight. Thank you for jumping on early in the morning with us. Go get some breakfast, some coffee, and
Yeah.
and let's prepare for puck drop tonight in New York City.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a exciting time once again. So happy to get going.
Absolutely, Henry. I appreciate it, man. I'm sure we will be talking to you very soon.
Awesome. Sounds good. Enjoy the season.
Yes, sir. You do. Henry Yoho, managing editor, Bolts by the Bay, our Tampa Bay Lightning senior analyst. I mean, you can't get much more excited than you really can't. You can't get much more excited than you are right now. We've been waiting for this day for a long time. Me, I'm a football first guy. Football has always been my love and my passion. But man, now that hockey's here, I've had this day circled on my calendar since the schedule was released. Like this was my time. I needed, like I felt like I needed it. Like I was a hockey junkie. But yeah, I'm super excited, and I can't wait for puck drop tonight. To get this regular season underway and start our redemption season down here for our SEC hockey team. Wink, wink, Michael Wilbon. I want to touch, as you know, we've got about 15 minutes or so left. I want to touch on the controversial roughing the passer penalty that we had witnessed against Grady Jarrett for his tackle on Tom Brady. So I said yesterday on the morning show that if this is any other quarterback that's on the receiving end of one of the slinging tackles that caused Tua to that caused Tua to have his brainstem injury, that caused him to posture. If this is any other quarterback, people say, "Oh, well, yeah, clearly the NFL is going to be cracking down on these types of tackles to prevent head trauma." Because 9 times out of 10, when you're going to essentially get German suplexed by a defender, your head's going to smash into the ground. And what have we learned through the first 5 weeks of this NFL season? These new helmets aren't protecting anybody's dome. These new helmets aren't helping anybody. They're not doing anybody any justice. We've seen more concussions through 5 weeks than we did like almost all of last season. Almost all of the season before. We've seen so many more concussions. And I hate that the NFL is making a point of emphasis on protecting head trauma. I don't hate that, but I hate that the first call of that nature had to go for Tom Brady, because I feel like it was a little bit of an overcorrection from Jerome Boger. But it happened last night to Patrick Mahomes, and both Troy Aikman and Joe Buck were looking for the flag, and it never came. Right? Chris Jones gets a roughing the passer on Derek Carr for the body weight roughing the passer, right? But I think this is the issue that the NFL has now, is you've taken the body weight tackle away. So the only thing you can do is either essentially throw a spear where you're throwing your shoulder into the guy's stomach, or you're going to have these slinging style tackles, because you can't take both of them away. Then you literally can't touch the quarterback. You might as well throw a red shirt on the quarterback. You know, I hate that it was on Tom Brady, because we understand that the league is going to try and alleviate all of the concussions that they can. They're going to try and alleviate all of the head trauma and the brainstem injuries. If this was Davis Mills, if this was Jalen Hurts, if it was anybody outside of like the favorite players to hate, right? You've got your Patrick Mahomes. People love to hate Patrick Mahomes. People love to hate Tom Brady. They love to hate who else? Dak. Obviously, he's out right now. But, there's certain guys that I wish would not have been, one of the first few quarterbacks to be on the receiving end of this style call, because I feel like now the NFL is going to kind of retract that a little bit, right? I'm a fan of bring back the body weight tackles. That to me is the safest way. We're not watching 400-pound, 350-plus-pound defensive linemen like we used to back in the 90s. It's a different style game. It's a faster, more finesse game. You're not watching these huge behemoths up front like we used to have in the 90s. You're watching guys like Aaron Donald and Chris Jones and Chandler Jones. And, this is what we're watching now. We're watching smaller, more muscular guys than we are just watching heavier set guys on the defensive line. That's the evolution of the game. We have to bring back the body tackle, the body weight tackle, if we want to alleviate the roughing the passer from a slinging tackle, because that's almost the only way that you can do it. You know, Ndamukong Suh, I'll never forget when Ndamukong Suh got flagged for throwing Jay Cutler to the ground. He pushed Jay Cutler to the ground and got flagged for roughing the passer. You know, that to me was the height of the, oh my God, how do we tackle quarterbacks? Right? We alleviate, we are getting rid of, I'm going to call it the German suplex because I think that's more fun. We get rid of the German suplex, right? You get rid of that, you get rid of the body weight. You can't tackle below the knees. How do you tackle a quarterback now? How do you tackle a quarterback when you've taken the vast majority of the options away? I'm all for taking away the sling. I'm all for that. How many times do you see it? Most of the time, the vast majority of the time, when you see that, a guy's either going to blow out his shoulder, he lands on his shoulder, trying to prevent his head from hitting the ground, or his head hits the ground, he gets taken out with a concussion. I mean, it happens, right? And this is the conundrum that the NFL has. You know, forget that they don't know what, you know, they can't figure out what constitutes a catch and what constitutes a football move. Is it 3 steps? Is it 3 steps and a shimmy? Is it 2 steps and a slide? Is it a juke? Like there's too many times where the NFL just has these subjectivity calls, and we are all left confused, except the fans of the team that received the better end of that stick. But we need to figure out a better way to protect our quarterbacks and to protect our other players. You know, we see the slinging tackle. I feel like this is going to end up becoming part of like a horse collar. You know, they implemented the horse collar tackle because guys were blowing out their knee and blowing out their ankles when they were pulled down from behind. Their legs were getting caught up under them and bad things were going to happen. I feel like, you know, it's hard to do it 5 weeks into the season and expect guys to just be able to go, oh, okay, cool, and adjust and adapt to that. But I definitely believe that we will see the implementation of this new rule for tackling come into effect when the competition committee gets together in the offseason. I really do. I don't see any way that happens, but I do think that if we're going to eliminate that style of tackle, you have to allow the body weight tackle to come back. You have to allow it. There's no other way, because you have to weigh it. You have to weigh it out, right? Realistically, you have to weigh it out. What would you rather have? Would you rather have your quarterbacks get concussed, or would you rather have your quarterbacks be a little bit sore because somebody fell on them? I know which way I would go. Which way would you go? I'm pretty sure that we would all kind of agree. I would rather see a guy get body slammed to the ground rather than getting his head slammed into the ground. Knowing what we know about concussions, knowing what we know about CTE, I'm not a fan of guys' heads being slammed into the ground. I never have been, but knowing what we know now, definitely now. You know, maybe, and like I said, maybe the call on Grady Jarrett was an overcorrection by the NFL. Because look, we know how the NFL kind of handles these situations, right? We know that the NFL has been known to miss something and then overcorrect. We know that. And this happens with a lot of different things. This happens with play calling. This happens with rule enforcing, time management. It happens. You know, some people are saying that, oh, well, this was just a makeup for the completely botched no call pass interference on Scotty Miller. Possibly. It's entirely possible, but the tackle that happened on Tom Brady was identical to the tackle that happened on Tua. So when I look at that, that tells me it's not an overcorrection. It's not a makeup call. It's a, hey, we're putting more effort on protecting our quarterbacks. Todd Bowles, again, told us at the press conference, he believes that the NFL is making more of an emphasis to eliminate head trauma. That style of tackle is probably going to end up becoming a flag more often. Wasn't thrown last night against Patrick Mahomes. I'm well aware of that. A lot of people decided they were going to slide in my DMs or at me on Facebook or Twitter or what have you. But that doesn't change the fact that everybody was looking for that flag. Everybody assumed that that was going to be a penalty, but for some reason the flag didn't come out because it's still currently a subjective call. That's where the game is at right now. And like I said, I would not be surprised if we see that next year become a thing of you're not allowed to tackle the quarterback. You're not allowed to whip the quarterback around. And I would be okay if that was implemented for all. Honestly, I would be okay if that was implemented for all players. If I'm going to regularly tackle you, your head's not going to smash into the ground. If I'm going to whip you down, chances of your head hitting the ground are pretty damn high, and you're probably going to be taken out of the game and put in the concussion protocol anyway. So what better way to keep our star players on the field than to eliminate the amount of times their head is bashed into the ground? Craziness. I know. I'm telling you. That's going to wrap it up for us today on this Tuesday edition. Happy hockey day from us over here at Channelside Sports. I am Danny. Make sure you are following us on all of the social media platforms. Just search for the Channelside Sports Network. A lot of cool things coming up. We'll be over at the game for the home opener, which we'll talk obviously thoroughly and in depth. Got some new series starting. We've got some new players joining the roster. We a hell of a great time over here at Channelside Sports. Make sure you follow us. We are Tampa Bay's next generation of sports talk. Oh, and also the tagline on the bottom, that's 100% accurate, numerically and analytically backed up. By the way, I am Danny. If you want to chop it up with me, if you want to argue about the head trauma, please follow me on Twitter at RealDannyB. We'll talk. I'm open. I'm here all day. Let's talk about it. I want to hear your opinions on the head trauma. I want to hear your opinions on the slinging, whipping style of tackle. Should that be eliminated? Should the body weight tackle be brought back? Who knows? I'll catch you guys tomorrow, and hopefully it'll be a victory Wednesday for our Tampa Bay Lightning. I'm Danny. See ya.